In the heart of Transylvania, a castle still bleeds. Every full moon red mist rises from its walls. Tonight, it called her name. The carriage moved slowly through the fog-covered mountains. Snow fell in thin, lazy flakes, covering the black trees like ashes. Elena Petrova held her coat close and stared through the frosted glass. Somewhere ahead, hidden in the mist, stood the castle that had haunted stories for centuries, Dracula's castle. She was a historian from Bucharest, young, brave, and a little too curious. Her work was to study the truth behind old vampire legends. But deep inside, she also wanted to prove something to herself, and to the world that laughed at her for believing in curses. After hours of silence, the carriage stopped at a small village called Vale. The horses refused to move further. Their eyes were wild, their breath heavy. The driver jumped down, crossed himself, and said, "This is where I stop, miss. The castle road begins here, but I won't go up there. No man should." Elena frowned. "Why? It's only a building. Legends cannot hurt anyone." The driver looked around nervously. "It's not the stones that hurt, lady. It's what sleeps inside." He left her suitcase on the ground, climbed back onto the carriage, and vanished into the fog. Elena sighed and looked at the empty street. The village was quiet, almost too quiet. Windows were closed, doors bolted, and only the church bell rang faintly in the distance. She found a small inn with a faded sign, the Crimson Rest. Inside, an old woman sat behind the counter, counting beads in her hand. Her eyes widened when she saw the stranger. "You're not from here," the woman said. "No," Elena replied. "I'm visiting for research. I'm staying one night." The woman's hands shook. "Research? About what?" "The old castle," Elena said. "The one on the hill." The beads slipped from the woman's fingers. "That place is cursed. Every full moon, a red mist comes down from the mountain. People vanish. Their blood is never found." Before Elena could answer, the inn door opened. A tall man in a priest's robe stepped inside. His hair was silver, his face pale. "Enough, Marta," he said softly. "Do not fill her head with fear." He turned to Elena. "I am Father Andre. You must be the scholar from Bucharest." Elena nodded politely. "Yes, I study old beliefs and folklore." The priest looked at her for a long time. "Then study wisely. The castle on that hill is not only part of history, it is part of the dark that never died." That night, the wind howled through the cracks in the inn walls. Elena couldn't sleep. She opened her notebook and wrote, "Vale, Transylvania. Locals avoid Dracula's castle. Fear is still alive here." She stopped when she heard footsteps outside her room. Slow, careful. Not the creak of wood, but something softer, like bare feet sliding across the floor. Elena froze. The candle flickered, throwing long shadows on the wall. "Who's there?" she whispered. No reply. Only the wind. Then, from the window, came a faint, scratching sound. She turned. The fog outside was thick, glowing slightly red in the moonlight. Through the mist, she saw a shadowed face, pale, with eyes burning like coal. Her breath caught. The figure vanished as quickly as it appeared. She rushed to the window and opened it. Nothing. Only the sound of wolves howling somewhere far up the mountain. She closed the window and leaned against the wall, her heart pounding. Maybe it was imagination. Maybe it was just fog and fear, but she could still feel those eyes watching her. The next morning, the church bells rang again. Elena met Father Andre outside the chapel. He carried a small silver cross around his neck. "You look pale," he said. "I didn't sleep well," she admitted. "Someone was outside my window." He nodded slowly. "Then the castle already knows you are here." Elena frowned. "What do you mean?" "Evil watches all who approach it," he said. "You must leave this place. Tonight is the full moon." But she didn't listen. I came this far. I won't leave without seeing the castle. The priest sighed. Then at least take this. He handed her a small wooden cross. And remember, not all doors are meant to be opened. Elena placed the cross in her pocket, smiled, and thanked him. As she walked toward the road that led up the mountain, the villagers watched from behind closed curtains. No one dared speak. The sky darkened as the sun fell behind the peaks. The wind rose, carrying whispers that sounded like words. Elena felt a strange pull, as if something in that ancient castle was calling her by name. Far above, the towers of Dracula's castle appeared through the mist. The red moon was rising. And deep inside the castle walls, a single candle burned in a tall window. A shadow moved behind it, watching, waiting. Morning came slowly to the frozen valley. The fog never lifted. It just changed color from black to gray. Elena packed her notes and the small wooden cross Father Andre had given her. The old innkeeper begged her not to go. "Child," she said, voice trembling, "the road eats souls. You will not come back." But Elena smiled softly. "Every legend begins with fear. I just want to see what's real." She stepped outside. Her boots crunched on the snow. The mountains looked like sleeping giants under the cold sky. Ravens circled above, crying harshly, as if warning her to turn back. At the edge of the village waited an old carriage. The driver was silent, his face hidden behind a wool scarf. He didn't ask questions, he just nodded and cracked the reins. The horses started climbing the narrow mountain road. The higher they went, the darker the forest grew. Trees twisted like claws, their branches bare and black. Sometimes, Elena thought she heard whispering behind the trunks. Once, she saw something move tall, thin, and pale, but when she blinked, it was gone. The driver spoke suddenly. "Do you hear that?" Elena listened. At first, it was only wind. Then she heard a faint sound, soft, crying from somewhere deep among the trees. She looked out. Between the branches stood a woman in a torn white dress, her face hidden by her hair. She lifted one arm, slowly pointing toward the castle above the hill. "Stop!" Elena shouted. The driver panicked. "No, that's a forest spirit!" He whipped the horses, and the carriage lurched forward. Elena lost sight of the woman. A few minutes later, the driver's hands began to shake. "We can't go farther," he whispered. "The road's cursed. I won't die for silver." He jumped down, left the reins, and ran back toward the village without another word. Elena sat in silence. The horses stood still, breathing clouds of steam. Ahead, the stone road curved upward, disappearing into mist. Far above, the black towers of Dracula's castle rose like broken teeth against the sky. She took her bag and continued on foot. Each step echoed in the quiet snow. Her heartbeat was loud in her ears. The path was steep, lined with crosses half buried in ice. On some, she saw strange marks, like claw scratches. When she reached the old gates of the castle, the air grew colder. The iron bars were huge, covered in frost and rust. As she touched them, they creaked open by themselves, slow and heavy, as if welcoming her. Inside, the courtyard was wide and empty. Crows perched on statues of angels, their wings black with dust. The silence was deep enough to make her ears ring. Then she heard footsteps. From the main door of the castle came a tall man dressed in black, his coat sweeping the ground like a shadow. His face was pale, almost too perfect, with eyes as dark as obsidian. "Welcome," he said. His voice was calm, deep, and smooth. "I am Count Vladis. You must be Miss Petrova." Elena nodded nervously. "Yes, Count. I wrote you a letter. I'm a historian." He smiled faintly. "Of course. Your arrival was expected." "Expected?" she repeated. "The castle remembers all who seek its truth," he said. "Come inside. The wind here carries bad memories. Elena followed him through the tall doors. The moment they closed, the sound echoed like thunder. She felt the weight of stone and silence press around her. The entrance hall was enormous walls of black marble, chandeliers thick with cobwebs, portraits of ancient nobles staring down from the walls. The faces in the paintings looked strangely similar, each one with the same eyes as Count Vladis. "You live here alone?" she asked. "Almost," he said. "Some servants remain, but they prefer the dark." His voice lingered like music, slow and cold. He led her to a grand dining room lit by hundreds of candles. A meal was already waiting: roasted meat, dark bread, and red wine. The air smelled of iron. "Please," said the Count. "Eat." Elena sat, but didn't touch the food. The Count watched her closely. His eyes never blinked. "You are brave to come here," he said. "Most people fear the stories." "I study them," she said. "I don't believe in monsters." He smiled again, showing just the faintest edge of sharp teeth. "Then you may be the first to see one." For a moment, the candlelight flickered and his reflection vanished from the mirror behind him. Elena froze. When the flame steadied again, the reflection returned as if nothing had happened. Count Vladis stood. "You must rest. The castle is large and old. Mara, my servant, will show you your room." From the corner, a pale young woman stepped forward. Her eyes were frightened. She bowed and whispered, "Follow me, miss." As they walked down the long corridor, Elena whispered, "Are you all right?" Mara's voice trembled. "He knows when we speak. The walls listen." "What do you mean?" But Mara only looked up at the ceiling and whispered, "Do not open any door that is already closed." Elena turned back once more. The Count stood at the end of the hall, smiling faintly, one hand resting on the wall. The candlelight around him dimmed, as if even the fire feared him. Outside, thunder rolled over the mountains. The full moon was rising, and somewhere deep in the castle, something ancient began to move. The night settled heavy around the castle. Wind howled through cracks in the ancient stone, sounding like distant screams. Helena sat near a small fire in her room, writing notes in her journal by candlelight. The flames shook with every gust, throwing dancing shadows on the walls. She tried to focus on her research but couldn't. The castle felt alive. Every sound, the whisper of the curtains, the creak of the floor seemed to breathe. Her room was grand yet cold. A tall mirror stood in one corner, covered by a dark cloth. The bed was carved from oak, its headboard marked with strange symbols she didn't understand. Mara had brought her a tray of food earlier, but refused to stay long. "Eat fast, miss," she had whispered, "and keep your light burning." Now Elena sat alone, staring at the flickering candle. She picked up the wooden cross Father André had given her and placed it near the window. For some reason, it made her feel safer. Then she heard it, a faint echo, a voice, low and distant, whispering her name. "Elena." She froze. The sound came from the hallway. At first, she thought it was the wind again. But then it came once more, clearer this time, closer. "Elena." She stood, holding her candle, and opened the door. The corridor outside was dark, except for a few dying torches. The air was cold and smelled faintly of blood and smoke. "Mara?" she called softly. No reply. She stepped out. Her candlelight showed long portraits on the walls, ancestors of Count Vladis, all with the same piercing eyes. As she passed, she thought their eyes followed her. The whisper came again. It sounded like it came from below. She followed the sound through a narrow staircase, her footsteps echoing. The deeper she went, the colder the air became. Dust filled her lungs. Finally, she reached a wide hall, the Hall of Echoes. Dozens of tall mirrors stood against the walls, their glass cracked and stained. The floor was covered with faded symbols drawn in red paint, or maybe blood. Elena lifted her candle. Her reflection flickered strangely, moving a second later than she did. She took a step closer, and her reflection smiled, but she didn't. She gasped and stepped back. The reflection's smile faded. Suddenly, one of the mirrors shattered by itself, the sound echoing like a scream. Behind the broken glass, something dark moved, a shadow crawling up the wall like smoke. Elena turned to run, but a voice stopped her. "Do not fear the echoes." Count Vladis stood at the far end of the hall, silent and still as stone. His black coat swayed, though there was no wind. "What is this place?" Elena asked, her voice shaking. "The hall remembers what the world forgets," he said. "Every soul who dies in this castle leaves behind an echo, a memory. Sometimes they whisper." She looked around, her breath fogging the air. "I heard them call my name." His eyes glowed faintly red in the candlelight. "Then they already know you." Elena clutched her cross. "Why would they know me?" "Because your blood once walked these halls," he said softly. "Long ago, before she could speak." He vanished, simply faded into the shadows as if swallowed by the air. Her candle blew out. The darkness pressed around her. Dozens of whispers filled the hall now, men, women, even children, all murmuring words she couldn't understand. "Elena, return the heart. Awaken the blood." She dropped the candle and ran up the stairs, her footsteps echoing behind her like 100 others. When she reached the top, Mara stood waiting with wide, terrified eyes. "You went down there?" Mara whispered. "No one goes to the hall." "I heard voices," Elena gasped. "And I saw him vanish. He disappeared." Mara pulled her back toward the room. "You must not wander. The Count sees everything, even through the dark." Elena shut the door behind them, shaking. "Who are those voices? What do they want?" Mara lowered her eyes. "They are what's left of those who came before you." Before Elena could ask more, the castle's bell tolled once. Midnight. Mara's face turned pale. "He walks now." "Who?" Elena asked. Mara's lips trembled. "The Count. He sleeps not at night." Elena turned to the window. The moon had turned red behind the clouds. Far below, mist was rising again from the valley, thick, crimson, and alive. Then came the sound of footsteps outside her door. Slow, measured. Each step heavy enough to shake the floorboards. Mara backed away, whispering, "He's here." The door handle turned. Elena blew out her candle and pressed her back against the wall. The door opened slowly. In the dark stood the Count, tall and silent, his eyes glowing faintly like dying embers. He smiled. "You should rest," he said softly. "The castle has a way of exhausting its guests." He turned and left. The door closed again, locking by itself. Elena stood frozen. For the first time, she truly felt what the villagers had meant. This place was alive. She looked at the mirror again. For a brief second, her reflection did not move. Then it smiled. The morning came gray and heavy. A storm rolled across the mountains, and thunder shook the castle walls. Elena barely slept. The memory of the whispering mirrors still clung to her mind like cobwebs. When Mara brought her breakfast, she refused to meet Elena's eyes. "You shouldn't go wandering again," she whispered. "Especially not today." "Why?" Elena asked. Mara's voice was faint. "Because today is the day the West Wing opens." Elena frowned. "The West Wing?" Mara looked toward the door as if someone might be listening. "It has been sealed for 100 years. No one enters. No one should." Elena's curiosity sparked again. "What's inside?" "The past," Mara said, and left without another word. Outside, wind screamed across the towers. Elena wrapped her coat tight and stepped into the corridor. The air smelled of dust and old wood. The torches burned weakly. The castle felt emptier than before. She walked past portraits whose faces now seemed cracked and darker than yesterday. Every few steps, She thought she heard faint breathing behind her, but when she turned, there was nothing. When she reached the main hall, she found Count Vladis standing before a huge window. He looked out at the storm. "You did not sleep," he said without turning. "How do you know?" He smiled slightly. "The castle tells me." She hesitated. "What is in the West Wing?" He turned then, slowly. "Memories best left in chains. I want to study them," she said. "History cannot remain buried." He stepped closer, his eyes darker than before. "Curiosity has killed more than cats, Miss Petrova." She swallowed but did not back down. "Then let it kill me with truth." For a long time, he said nothing. Then he turned away. "Very well, but do not touch what you cannot understand." That was all the permission she needed. Later that evening, when the castle grew silent and the wind calmed, Elena took a candle and crept toward the West Wing. She found a tall wooden door bound with iron chains. The lock was old and rusted. On it was carved a symbol, a heart surrounded by fire. She pressed her hand against the symbol. The metal was cold, but something pulsed beneath it like a faint heartbeat. Suddenly, the chains snapped open by themselves. The heavy doors groaned and swung inward, revealing darkness and dust. The air smelled ancient, like forgotten graves. Inside, long corridors stretched into shadows. Torn curtains fluttered. Faded paintings lined the walls, showing scenes of war, blood, and ritual. Elena walked deeper, her candlelight trembling. In one room, she found old books stacked on a table. Their covers were made of leather that looked disturbingly like skin. She opened one carefully and froze. The pages were written in blood. She read the first line aloud. "Hi, Vladis Dracula, bind my soul to the heart of the first." Her hands shook. The Count's name. The same face. The same handwriting on letters she'd seen from centuries ago. She turned another page. Drawings of hearts, bones, and strange glowing symbols filled the book. A note written in red ink read, "The heart must never sleep. If it breaks, the blood shall rise again." A chill ran through her body. Behind her, something scraped across the floor. She spun around. The candlelight flickered. In the shadows stood tall figures, armored soldiers, their faces hidden behind rusted helmets. Their eyes glowed faintly red. They stepped forward with slow, heavy movements. Elena backed away, heart pounding. "Who are you?" Their voices came together in a deep, hollow whisper. "We are the Shadow Guard. Bound to the blood, bound to the heart." She stumbled, clutching the wooden cross in her pocket. One of them raised a rusted sword. Before it struck, a voice thundered through the hall. "Enough!" The shadow guards froze. Count Vladis stood in the doorway, his black cloak sweeping the ground. "She is under my protection," he said coldly. The guards lowered their weapons and vanished into smoke. Elena gasped for breath. What were they? "The last servants of my ancestor," the Count said. "Their duty is to protect what lies beneath." "The heart," she whispered. His expression darkened. "You read too much." He grabbed her arm, not hard, but firm, and led her out of the West Wing. "You think this is history, Miss Petrova," he said softly. "But it is still alive." When they reached the main corridor, the doors behind them slammed shut again. The chains reappeared, glowing faintly red. He released her. "Stay out of that wing, if you value your soul." Elena looked up at him. What is the heart of the first vampire? For the first time, she saw something in his eyes, fear. "Pray you never find it," he whispered. Then he turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving her alone with her trembling candle. She looked back once at the sealed door. The chains no longer glowed, but from behind them came a faint, slow beating sound, like a heart, still alive. The storm did not stop for 2 days. Lightning flashed across the black sky, and thunder rolled through the mountains like the roar of an angry god. Inside the castle, Elena felt trapped in a world where time had stopped. She stayed mostly in her room, trying to make sense of what she had read in the Forbidden Wing. The words, "Heart of the First Vampire," repeated in her mind again and again. What did it mean? Why did the Count fear it? On the third night, Mara entered quietly. Her eyes were red from crying. "He knows you went into the West Wing," she whispered. "I had to," Elena said. "I needed to understand." Mara shook her head. "Understanding kills faster than fangs. E will not forgive this." "Then help me," Elena pleaded. "Tell me what the heart is." Mara hesitated. The candlelight flickered across her pale face. "It is not a thing," she said softly. "It is a being what gives him life. The heart of the first vampire beats beneath this castle. It keeps the curse alive. It drinks the blood of the living and gives power to the Count." Elena's blood ran cold. "Then he is not just a man." Mara's eyes filled with tears. "He is a shadow that wears a man's face." Before Elena could ask more, the door opened by itself. Count Vladis stood there, silent. His eyes glowed faintly crimson. "Mara," he said gently, "leave us." The girl bowed and hurried out. The Count stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The candle flame turned blue. "You should not have touched those books," he said. His voice was calm, but every word felt heavy, like a chain tightening around her neck. "I wanted the truth," Elena replied, forcing herself to stand tall. "Who are you, really?" He looked at her for a long time, then turned toward the window. "Truth is a cruel thing, Miss Petrova, but you deserve to know." He faced her again, his eyes shining like dark fire. "I am Vladis Dracula, last of the bloodline of Vlad Tepes, known to your world as Dracula. The curse that began with him flows in me. I cannot die. I cannot rest. And every 100 years, the heart demands blood. From one of your family." Elena froze. "My family?" He nodded slowly. "You are not here by chance. Your ancestor Lucian Petrova was the man who betrayed Dracula to the hunters. Because of him, the heart was sealed, and the bloodline was cursed. Since then, every Petrova who enters Transylvania is called by the castle." Her knees felt weak. "So I was meant to come?" "Yes," he said quietly. "Your blood is the key to the curse. The heart can only be destroyed or awakened by your hand." Lightning flashed, illuminating his pale face. "You see, Elena, I have protected that heart for centuries, but it is growing stronger. Soon, it will awaken itself. Then, let me destroy it," she said. "End this nightmare." A small, bitter smile touched his lips. "You do not understand. If the heart dies, I die with it." Silence filled the room. Elena looked at him, really looked. For the first time, she saw the sorrow behind his eyes, the weight of endless years. "You don't want this life, do you?" He turned away. "Once, I was human. I loved. I lost. Now I am only memory." The wind outside screamed. He stepped closer. "You have two choices, Elena. Leave this place and live, or stay and learn what it means to carry cursed blood." She met his eyes. "I didn't come here to run." Something like respect flashed across his face. "Then you are braver than most. But bravery has a price." Suddenly, the ground trembled. Candles flickered violently. From deep beneath the castle came a low, pulsing sound. A heartbeat. The Count stiffened. "It begins." "What begins?" Elena cried. "The awakening." He grabbed her arm. "Go to the chapel and wait for me. Do not look behind you, no matter what you hear." But before she could move, the floor cracked open. A wave of red mist burst through the room. The Count's eyes turned bright crimson. "Elena!" he shouted. "Run!" She ran into the corridor as the walls shook. Portraits fell and shattered. From the cracks in the stone, black smoke rose and twisted into shapes figures of the dead, whispering her name. "Elena!" Elena. She reached the stairs but stopped when she saw Mara standing there, trembling. Come, Elena shouted. Mara shook her head. It's too late. The heart is awake. The dead will walk again. Behind them, the castle groaned like a living creature. The last thing Elena saw before the lights went out was the Count's silhouette, surrounded by the swirling red mist, his face torn between agony and hunger. And then, darkness. When Elena opened her eyes, everything was dark and cold. The air smelled of dust, blood, and stone. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Then she felt the ground beneath her hard marble, wet with dripping water. She tried to sit up. Pain shot through her shoulder. Her candle was gone. Only faint red light pulsed from somewhere far away. Mara? She whispered. No answer. Only her own breath, echoing off the walls. Her fingers touched something rough and curved. When she looked closer, she realized she was surrounded by bones. Human bones, piled high like walls. Skulls stared at her from the shadows. A faint humming sound came from the distance, like a heartbeat deep underground. She stood slowly and called again. Mara! A whisper came back. Not an echo, but a voice. Follow the blood. Elena froze. Who's there? No reply. She picked up a rusted lantern lying nearby. To her surprise, a small blue flame flickered to life inside it as soon as she touched it. She raised it high. The red glow ahead came from a tunnel carved into the rock. Old symbols were scratched along the walls, circles, crosses, and a heart drawn in red ash. As she walked forward, she saw more signs of life or death. Old chains hung from the ceiling. Broken coffins lined the sides. Some still had bones inside them. At the end of the tunnel stood a heavy stone door. On it was written, Here beats the first. Elena hesitated, her heart racing. She pushed the door open slowly. It groaned, echoing through the silence. Inside was a wide chamber. The ceiling was low and covered in cobwebs. In the center stood a black stone altar, surrounded by candles that burned with red flame. Above the altar hung something terrible, a heart, large as a man's head, floating in midair and beating slowly. Each pulse sent out a wave of red light. Elena stepped closer, shaking. The sound of the heartbeat filled her skull, louder and louder, until it matched her own. Then a whisper filled the room. You carry his blood. You carry the key. Elena. She turned. Mara stood in the doorway, pale and terrified. Don't go near it, Mara said. That's the heart of the first vampire. It feels your blood. It knows you're here. Elena took a step back, her eyes wide. What does it want from me? Mara's voice cracked. It wants freedom. For centuries, the Count has kept it alive by feeding it blood. But now, it calls for a new host. Elena's breath caught. You mean me? The candles flickered violently. The heart pulsed faster, like it was answering her. Red veins began to spread across the walls, glowing faintly. Then, the Count's voice echoed through the chamber, deep and strained. Elena, step away. He appeared at the doorway, his eyes blazing. His face looked older, almost human, filled with pain. I told you not to come here. You lied to me, she cried. You said you wanted to protect it, but you're its prisoner. He stepped closer. You don't understand. If it dies, so do I. But if it lives, everyone dies. The ground shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. The heart beat faster, brighter. Suddenly, dark shapes crawled from the shadows, figures in armor. The Shadow Guard, their glowing eyes fixed on Elena. Protect the heart. They whispered in unison. The Count drew a silver dagger from his coat. No! She must live! He slashed one of the guards across the chest, but it didn't bleed. It only screamed smoke. Another swung a sword at him. The sound of metal and echoing roars filled the crypt. Run, Elena, he shouted. but she couldn't move. The heart was glowing brighter now. Pulling her forward, she felt warmth spreading through her veins, calling her name, whispering in her mind. Blood calls to blood. Her eyes stung. Visions flashed Dracula himself, standing before a crowd of torches, burning, cursing the sky. Then a man's voice, Elena Petrova, swearing to destroy him. Elena! The Count grabbed her shoulders. His hands burned cold. You must resist it. I can't, she cried. It's inside my head. He looked desperate. Then it's begun the merging. Mara ran to Elena's side. We have to break the spell. How? Elena gasped. Mara held up a small vial filled with holy water. If it touches the heart, it will burn it, but you must be willing to let go. Elena's vision blurred. She felt the heart's pulse in her own chest. If I destroy it, he dies. The Count met her eyes. Then end me, and end this curse. Let the world be free. Tears ran down her face. I can't. You must, he said softly. It's the only way. The red light grew unbearable. Shadows screamed. The castle shook so violently that the ceiling cracked open. Elena took the vial, her hands trembling. She looked once at the Count, his expression calm, almost peaceful. Then she threw the vial at the heart. The explosion was like thunder. Red fire filled the chamber. The heart shrieked like a living creature, bursting into blood and smoke. Elena was thrown to the ground. Everything went black. The last thing she heard was the Count's voice, soft, fading. Thank you, Elena. When Elena opened her eyes again, the world was no longer silent. The air burned red. The ground trembled under her, and the walls of the crypt glowed like molten stone. The heart was gone, but something worse had taken its place. Dracula's spirit, rising from the blood that covered the floor. A shadow took form in front of her, taller than any man, with wings of smoke and eyes burning like twin suns. It smiled a terrible ancient smile. At last, the voice boomed. I am free. Elena crawled backward, trembling. No, you were destroyed. The shadow turned toward her. Destroyed? It laughed, the sound like 1,000 whispers at once. No, my blood sleeps, my blood waits, and now it beats in you. Her heart pounded violently. She looked down, faint red veins pulsed beneath her skin. The Count staggered from the smoke, his body weak and torn. His pale face glistened with blood. Elena, fight it! Don't let him in, she gasped. It's inside me. He knelt beside her, holding her face. Listen to me. The heart is gone, but it chose you as its vessel. If you give in, Dracula will return. You must resist. The spirit laughed again, echoing through the chamber. Resist? Foolish boy. You protected me for centuries. You kept me alive. The Count's eyes filled with fury. I kept you buried. He raised his dagger and struck at the shadow, but it passed through like mist. The blade clattered to the floor. Dracula's spirit drifted closer to Elena. Your ancestor stole my heart, girl. Now I will take yours. Elena screamed as fire shot through her veins. Visions filled her mind, endless nights, burning cities, blood on snow. She saw Dracula himself, standing before armies, fangs dripping red, and then she saw her own face among them, cold, immortal. No, she shouted. I won't be you. The spirit's voice softened, almost tender. You already are. Her reflection appeared on the black stone floor, but it wasn't hers anymore. Her eyes glowed crimson, her face pale, her teeth sharp. The Count held her hands. Listen to me, Elena. You can end this. The fire is his weakness. Call the light. What light? She cried. The light within you. The one your blood forgot, but your soul remembers. The spirit roared and wrapped around her like smoke. Its cold power squeezed her chest. She felt her heart slowing. In her mind, she saw Father Andre's face, his words echoing. Not all doors are meant to be opened. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I opened every door, she whispered. So now, I'll close the last. She pressed her hand against her chest and shouted, By blood and by light, I break the curse. A blinding glow burst from her body. The spirit screamed, its form breaking apart. The chamber shook as red fire turned to white. The Count shielded his eyes. Elena! Stop, you'll burn yourself, she cried out, her voice trembling between pain and strength. If it ends the darkness, then let it take me! The spirit howled one last time and vanished into the light. The ground cracked open, swallowing the blood-soaked altar. When the light faded, silence returned. The red glow was gone. Only the dim flame of the lantern flickered weakly. Elena lay motionless on the floor, her skin pale but calm. The Count crawled toward her and lifted her gently. Her pulse was faint. Elena? He whispered. Her eyes fluttered open. They were no longer red, just soft brown again. Did it work? She asked weakly. He nodded. The curse is broken. She smiled faintly. Then it's over. But his face darkened. For you, maybe. For me, it means the end. She looked at him in confusion. His hands were turning to ash. The curse that tied him to the heart was unraveling. No, she said, shaking her head. I won't let you fade. He smiled sadly. You already saved me. You gave me peace, something I never thought I'd have again. Tears filled her eyes. Please. He touched her cheek one last time. Live, Elena. Remember me not as the monster they feared, but as the man who loved the light he could never touch. His body dissolved into silver dust that floated upward and vanished through the cracks in the ceiling. Elena fell to her knees, sobbing. Around her, the crypt was collapsing. She stumbled to her feet and climbed toward the faint light above. The passage shook and crumbled behind her. Finally, she reached the surface. The storm had ended. Dawn was rising. The red mist had disappeared. She stood on the castle's broken balcony, breathing the cold morning air. The valley below was peaceful again, but as the sunlight touched her skin, she felt a sting. A small line of smoke rose from her hand. She looked down, her veins glowed faintly red, fading slowly but not gone. A whisper echoed in her mind, soft and cold. Blood never dies. Elena closed her eyes. Then I will live to watch it sleep. Behind her, the castle groaned one final time and collapsed into ashes. The sun rose over the mountains, pale and trembling, as if afraid to touch the land. Snowflakes sparkled in the morning light. The once mighty castle now lay in ruins, black stones scattered across the valley like broken bones. Elena stood among the ashes. Her hair was tangled, her coat torn, her face pale as marble. But her eyes still burned with life. For a long time, she said nothing. The silence was deep and endless. The wind whispered through the fallen towers, carrying voices of the past. She looked down at her hands. Faint red lines still ran under her skin, glowing softly like dying embers. The curse had not left her completely. It slept inside her veins, waiting. She picked up a piece of blackened stone from the ground. It was smooth and warm, pulsing faintly a piece of the heart. She held it tightly. It's over, she whispered. You can rest now. Behind her, footsteps crunched on the snow. She turned quickly. Father Andre was there, his silver cross glinting in the sun. His eyes were tired but kind. You survived, he said softly. Elena nodded. The Count didn't. He walked closer, looking at the ruins. No one truly survives this place unchanged. She looked back at the collapsed towers. I destroyed the heart, Father. But something remains. I can feel it. He studied her face carefully. Then it has marked you. A curse like this does not vanish, it passes. You are part of its story now. Elena's voice was quiet. I don't want to be. He placed a hand on her shoulder. You may not choose your blood, child, but you can choose what to do with it. She looked toward the horizon, where sunlight spilled over the snow. He said the same thing before he vanished. The Count wasn't evil, Father. He was trapped. Father Andre nodded. Even monsters can regret what they've become. The two stood in silence as the wind carried away the last of the red mist. Birds began to sing again, faintly, as if testing the safety of the air. After a moment, the priest said, "You must leave Transylvania. The valley will heal, but the people will not understand. They'll fear you." Elena smiled sadly. Maybe they should. He gave her a small wooden cross, the same one she'd left behind in the inn. "Keep this. It will remind you that light still belongs to you." She took it with trembling hands. "Thank you." He turned and walked back toward the mountain path. His figure slowly disappeared into the mist, leaving her alone again. Elena sat on a fallen stone, staring at the sunrise. The warmth touched her face, but it also burned slightly. She pulled her cloak tighter and whispered to herself, "You will not win." From the ruins behind her came a faint sound like a sigh, or maybe a voice carried by the wind. "Elena." She turned sharply. Nothing, just the cold air moving through broken walls. Still, she smiled faintly. "Goodbye, Count." She stood and began walking down the mountain road. Her steps were slow, steady. Ravens circled above, but they did not cry this time. When she reached the edge of the forest, she stopped to take one last look at the castle. For a moment, the sunlight touched the highest remaining tower, and in that brief golden light, she thought she saw a tall figure standing there, watching her. Then it was gone. She continued her journey, the cross in one hand and the stone fragment in the other. Days passed. She reached the village of Vale, but the people hid behind their windows when they saw her. Rumors spread quickly that the curse had walked among them again. At night, she stayed in the same old inn, the Crimson Rest. The innkeeper, Marta, peeked through the door and whispered, "You came back." "Yes," Elena said quietly. "But the castle didn't." Marta crossed herself. "Did you see the devil?" Elena smiled softly. "No, I saw a man who wanted to be free." Later that night, she sat by the window, watching the snow fall. The village slept in peace for the first time in generations. She opened her notebook and wrote her final words. "The curse of Transylvania is broken, but darkness leaves its shadow. I carry that shadow now. The world will forget, but I will remember." She closed the book and looked out again. In the distance, the mountains glowed silver under the moonlight. A soft wind blew through the valley, whispering like a breath on her neck. For a heartbeat, she felt warmth beside her, as if someone unseen stood near. She turned, half smiling. "You kept your promise, didn't you?" The candle flickered, though no window was open. Elena blew it out and whispered, "Good night, Count Vladis." Darkness filled the room, peaceful and still. Outside, the first light of dawn crept over the snowy hills. The sky turned gold, washing away the last traces of the curse. But in the ruins, far above the valley, deep under the stones, a single ember of red light pulsed, once faint but alive. The curse slept again, for now.